This is the Christmas Movie Screenwriter Podcast, episode number 10. Hello and welcome to the Christmas Movie Screenwriter Podcast. I'm your host, Karen McCann. The Christmas Movie Screenwriter is a podcast about writing, producing, and selling Christmas movies. You can find any links mentioned on the podcast on my website. Just go to www.christmasmoviescreenwriter.com and look for this episode, which is number 10. A quick few words about what I'm working on. I finished the rewrite of a female-led thriller called Italian Seduction, Framed by an Art Thief. I wrote it so it could be shot in Italy, which offers a 40% tax rebate. So I will soon be contacting producers stateside and in Europe who may have done female-led thrillers in the past. I also heard from a director that I've been chasing for a while, and he's agreed to direct a romantic comedy of mine called The Magic Bookshop. So I'm very happy about that. So I'll be reaching out to production companies who make rom-coms very soon. Lastly, I revised a Christmas action movie into more of a Christmas rom-com, and that should be done in a week or so. I also have lots of ideas for my next project. It's just a matter of deciding which one to do first, so lots of fun stuff ahead. Today's guest is screenwriter Erin Rodman. She has some inspiring things to say about being true to her own voice and how buyers are open to fresh ideas. Here is that interview. Erin Rodman worked in development at DreamWorks Studios and 20th Century Fox before becoming a story analyst for companies such as Paramount, Netflix, and Parks McDonald. Recently, she adapted a young adult novel for Amblin and Mark Platt Productions and has also written 6 Hallmark movies, including The Christmas House. Erin has an MFA in screenwriting from Loyola Marymount University and a master's degree in film and television theory from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. Wow. Erin, welcome to the Christmas Movie Screenwriter Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, thanks. Well, I told the audience a little bit about you, but why don't you take a minute and tell us about yourself and your work?
Okay. I am from Virginia originally. I moved out to Los Angeles to attend graduate school and jump into the business somehow. Where I grew up and where I'm from, it was really a kind of a dream to go out to the West Coast and see if I could make Hollywood a career. So I started with school, but I quickly started working as a production assistant on different sets and then got an assistant job at a studio and spent many years working for different companies, for different producers as I was writing on the side and learning how to be a development professional in my day job. And then eventually, was able to get the writing thing going. It's a marathon, in my experience, not a sprint. You pick up so many skills along the way. You kind of can't rush through the time it takes to hone your craft, to learn what you like, what your voice is, what stories you like to tell, where you see a place for yourself in the business. And so now I am a writer and enjoying, I write rom-coms primarily, comedies. I love any story with a female-driven core. I try to be funny, but I also like to bring in elements of other kind of genres like action or sci-fi. So I still have big dreams, even after all these years of so many more scripts to write. And along the way, I found myself doing some Christmas as well.
Okay. Fun. That you kind of answered my first question. Can you share the journey of you breaking into the industry as a Christmas movie screenwriter?
Yes, I think that one of the key things I like to communicate to people when they ask me about this is that I didn't write a Christmas movie in order to get into writing Christmas movies. I just wrote I just wrote a script it was the first time I ever just kind of let myself not think about anything but what I wanted to do on the page. It was my voice entirely, my sense of humor, my idea about what the story should be. I didn't try to guess at what a buyer might want or producer might like, or I just wrote for myself. It took me years of writing lots of different things to finally just say, I'm going to try this. And it was an R-rated, sort of female-driven comedy with a rom-com story as well, about a woman who finds herself in like legal hot water and has to go to great lengths to get out of it. and falls in love with someone along the way. And it was the script that got me a lot of meetings, including at Hallmark. And
Wow.
the thing that, I have found to be true, and with every company that I've worked for or met with, you don't have to necessarily write something that they would make to get on their radar. What executives and producers are looking for is a writer who knows their own voice, and that voice feels unique, distinct, and entertaining. And it doesn't necessarily matter if it's exactly the sort of thing that they would make that script. What a lot of companies like to do is bring your particular brand of creative voice and match it to what sort of projects they have. It is not your job to already give them something they want necessarily. That is also an option, but it really, the strength comes from having your own voice, and people just are attracted to that.
When you were sending those non-Christmas movies out, were you sending those out, or at the time did you have a rep that were sending them out for you?
Both. That particular script, I'd had reps that I wound up firing because we just didn't see eye to eye. And so I was content I worked as you've mentioned, my credits, I'd worked at a lot of companies. I had a long enough history working in Hollywood that I knew a lot of people. And so I was able to submit myself to certain places. But I kind of realized that you have to have the right reps who really understand what you want to do,
right,
in order for it to be a good marriage. And so I was like, those reps didn't work out for me. So I'm just going to try it on my own and wait and see who else I meet. And that particular script, that one script, got me a bunch of other meetings with agents and managers. And through that, I found reps that I really connected with. And so the script was going out before they signed me, but then also afterwards from them too. So it was both.
That's first of all, you're a contrarian, and good for you. And that's probably what made you stand out. And very brave too.
Well, I think a lot of I know when I listen to screenwriting podcasts, when I read screenwriting books, when I watch panel discussions, when I get to question screenwriters myself, I'm always seeking information about how they did this, how they do this, how did they manage this issue in their script, or this issue with their representative, or this issue with whatever, because we're all just looking for like best practices, how else somebody did something. But I found that in the end, once you learn all the rules, you can figure out what you don't want to do for yourself, and where you're willing to take risks. And I was like, it's scary not to have representatives to finally achieve that milestone of getting repped and getting someone on your team. And it terrified me to give that up, but I don't believe terror is a reason to do something. So I figured if I want something better, I'm going to have to take a risk here, and it worked. So, everyone has a different path, but for me, trying out some reps, being willing to let them go, and getting back into the jumping back into the pool and saying, who else can I find, was the right move.
Very brave. And I applaud that. So good on you. Now, how do you balance meeting audience expectations while staying fresh and not predictable or cliche?
Well, it's very difficult in the realm of Christmas, because at this point there are thousands, that is not a hyperbole, thousands of Christmas movies that many of us have seen. So the hard part is to keep the visuals fresh. I have found that you can get away with a lot if you are willing to. For me, for Christmas in particular, I pursue comedy in these things. Okay. We've seen the snowball fights. What's the craziest, funniest one that we could do? We've seen, cookie making. What's a new way to make cookie making look crazy and funny and outrageous? It's tough. And I know that a simple tactic that sometimes I'll start with, if we're talking about Christmas set pieces, is to just start Googling.
Okay. Good.
Just going down research rabbit holes as much as you can about specific strange, traditions some people have, or certain places have, or what's a Christmas locale? What do they do in, Fiji for Christmas? What do they do in, somewhere else? So that part is really challenging, and there's no quick way through it other than just to brainstorm yourself silly. I think that when it comes to rom-coms in general, or comedies in general, the more specific your characters are, the more they don't feel generic or like, one-dimensional, one note, the more they feel like people and have really specific grocery lists and, what classes did they love in college. Really understanding the details about your character's backstory and their mindset helps guide you finding more specific action set pieces and visuals that don't feel like, oh, it's something we've seen 1,000 times before. Because the more specifically honed your characters are, the more specific their choices will be, the more unique it will feel to that story.
That's great. Now, after you finish the script and it's ready to go out, what's your next step? How do you move it towards getting into production?
Well, one of the things about being a writer is there's only so much you have control over, as evidenced, for instance, by this year's strike, and all the things that, you have to put a pause on during a strike and deal with after a strike. There really is the most you can do for yourself as a writer is have more than one idea going. And when you finish a script, there's maybe multiple steps. When I finish a draft, an early draft, I will share it with friends first to get some initial feedback from trusted sources who can tell me the truth and who I feel safe, stumbling in front of if I've kind of not given it my best in certain scenes or with certain parts of the story. So that would be the first thing for me, is to get some feedback from people who are friends. And then the next step would be for me to submit it to my representatives and see what they say. I am, as I've already kind of mentioned, I enjoy having representatives. I want having my agents and my manager to be part of, this team, and we want to have success, but I have my own relationships with producers and executives as well. Right. And sometimes I will talk about projects, kind of plant the seed, mention to somebody, hey, I'm finishing up this particular script, and let them say to me, oh, when you're done, send it to me. So just kind of like create some expectation out there. It holds me accountable, keeps me on schedule, but it also makes people excited for something to come down the pike, whether it's from you directly or from your reps. So I think that is the normal, those are the normal steps. But the important thing for your mental health as a writer, as much as you can have mental health as a writer, is to already be thinking about what's next. That when you hit that email, send button, and your script goes to friends to read, or your reps, or a producer, that the next move for you is to pivot to your other idea. That you're not sitting there hitting refresh on your email or developing these ideas about why it's taking so long for someone to read something, or, why haven't they texted me? I sent it to the 2 days. Like, you can drive yourself insane, and none of it is necessary or helpful. So I try to really live in more than one story at once, even if I'm not opening final draft for each thing. I'm working on an outline, I'm working on a treatment, I'm doing research on something. But the more diversified my efforts are, my creativity is, the more I can continue to see my career as a bigger thing and not just project specific. Because you may love something, and it may be a script that you read to yourself and you're like, I really did it. I really did something here that I'm so proud of and I'm so excited by. You have no control over when, this company has the money to buy it, or that person has the time to read it. It can take time for the script to get to the right person. And if you're just sitting there waiting the whole time, not only are you wasting time, but you're making yourself crazy. And you don't have control over those external forces. Like during the strike, you can't, we had to sit on our hands, pencils down, and there was, you just have to live in that. So I think there's a skill you can develop to keep yourself mindful that it's a marathon. Look at your career as a global thing all the time, and not put your eggs all in one basket with one script.
Yeah, that's good advice. Now, How would you balance the heartwarming Christmas elements with perhaps another genre, like a heist, creating a unique and appealing story?
Well, I like this question a lot because I think when I think about it, truly, what we watch Christmas movies for is how they make us feel. And how you make someone feel a thing, there's a gazillion options for what images or what character moments or what dialogue will make them feel that. So you really have infinite choices as long as you're capturing the sentiment. So that's why I really believe you need to know your characters really well, because the depth of that character, the audience connects to that character's emotional state and spirit. That's why we love The Family Stone. That's why we love Love Actually. It's, they seem like lighter, fun Christmas movies, but we really understand and know those characters and feel for them. It almost doesn't matter whether we're watching Christmas or we're watching their Easter or we're watching them just on a regular Saturday. We care deeply about those characters. What was the rest of the question?
If you wanted to add like combine a genre like a
elements.
heist or something to a Christmas story, would that not be welcome in the market?
No, I think we are so desperate for variety because, like I said, it used to be that there was kind of one place you went for, your holiday rom-coms, and then there'd be a few big Hollywood Christmas movies every once in a while. But now we have Christmas content and holiday content on every platform, from every channel. It is so much. It is really hard to stand out. So blending genres is a terrific way to do that. Good. As far as in my experience, buyers are open to literally everything. A Christmas horror, a Christmas heist. I actually know someone who's writing a Christmas heist. So that all these things all the doors are wide open. You're just looking for something that will feel fresh for audiences, entertaining, and that's all welcome. Because the problem, can be that you might write a Christmas movie that feels like a Christmas movie audiences have seen before, and you're thinking, oh, this is the kind of thing they like. I'm going to write something similar. But the people who buy movies don't want that. They don't want a retread of what we've already seen. They want the next iteration. They want something that's slightly left or slightly right. And that's the challenge, is to find on ingenuity and innovation within a pretty traditional framework and genre.
I'm glad you said that. Because I'm more of an action girl, and I like heists. I like Christmas with some adventure. But anyway, I digress.
Well, I have two things I would say about this. One is a note I always got when I started writing Christmas. And this is a really hard, it's a kind of note you have to hear. I had to hear a bunch before I really understood how to apply it. I had given this note to other writers and watched them go through the same process where you have to hear it over and over before you really understand it, which is that Christmas or the holiday you're writing about, whatever it is, needs to feel intrinsic to the story. It cannot just be the backdrop. It can't just be a regular movie with a Christmas tree in the background set during snow. It has to feel connected. The story, core of the story, the concept itself has to feel connected to the holiday. Otherwise, it is just set dressing. It does not have the depth to really resonate as a holiday movie. And that can be hard to understand when you're like, but I have them sledding, but I have them wrapping presents. And I'm like, but if the story, if the action itself, what the characters are going through doesn't feel connected to the holiday, then it is just artifice. And I wrote a movie for Hallmark called Christmas Class Reunion. And I wrote a scene where the premise is kind of in the title. It's a high school class reunion that happens when? Over Christmas. Right. So I went into it thinking, how do I make this feel like more than just a class reunion set at Christmas? And I had written a scene where some of the students or the former students who are organizing the reunion have to get permission from the curmudgeonly principal to use the school, which is closed during the holidays. And I wrote this scene. They're going to visit the principal at his house and ask these questions. And the producer had such a great idea. And the note she gave me was, what if he's working as a mall Santa and they have to go see him
Oh,
at the
great.
mall and sit, kind of sit on his lap and ask him for this. And what if he's in character? Like he's,
Would that be
really,
funny?
yeah, he's this,
Okay.
sourpuss of a man, but as in Santa character, he is very much, you have to call him Santa. He talks like he's Santa. And it made the scene not only much more fun because the characters were interacting with someone who they had to play along, and the comedy was in them having to play along with this man who was pretending to be Santa. But it meant that the request for using the school and the reason they were there, the reason he said yes to it, the reason that all worked out is because he was in Santa mode and it was Christmas and he's granting their Christmas wish. What do you want for
Okay.
Christmas? So it made the scene not only more Christmassy and more funny, but it also connected the whole purpose of that question and of that answer, that maybe he would never have said yes were he not Santa. Maybe he never would have said yes were it not their Christmas wish. And it sounds a little cheesy, but it connected the Christmas of the story to what the characters wanted, how they behaved, and how, it all came together. And it was to me, it's an example of how you make Christmas not just he was Santa, but he only said yes to their request because it was Christmas, because he was Santa. And that is how the story pivots on that conversation. So I think that's an example I've used certainly when talking to other writers about how to nail the plot, nail the action to the idea of Christmas.
That's great. Now, how would you suggest screenwriters expand their network of producers? Do you suggest like networking or film markets? If so, which ones? Or competitions or online platforms?
I have found a lot of early success with contests. Not all of them are created equal, but there are plenty that are big enough and trusted enough by producers, by agents, by managers, that they will look at look at the list of semifinalists for the Austin Film Festival. Let's look at the list of semifinalists for the Nichols. There will be lists posted where even if you just make it through the first cut, your script name, your premise, your name will be out there. And I had a lot of, I placed in a few contests in my early years as a writer, and I always got a couple emails from managers, from producers, and that led to meetings. So I found it to be a very reliable source. I never have gone to do the markets or pitching. I feel like that's definitely possible for, as an avenue. I think pitching is its own difficult skill set to learn, and it's something that you need to practice a lot before you do.
Right.
But I think that's been a viable source for other people. I've never personally done that. I built my contacts, my network through, living and working in Hollywood for years before I was really launching myself as a writer. But I have found that if you know other writers, that's really helped me. It is helpful to meet producers and meet executives, but you aren't really going to be interesting to them until you have material that they can sell or that they like. So it's harder to make those relationships kind of stick. But when I met other writers and was part of writers groups, was part of writers retreats, kept kind of developed not just, hey, nice to meet you, let me get your email or follow you online, but also like we had deep conversations. We read each other's scripts. We participated in helping each other through the creative process. That's where I found real help. I was in a writers group for years that all of it eventually disbanded because all of us began working.
Okay, good.
And it was not only a support group for material where we read each other's scripts and gave notes, but also a support group for questions about the business.
Right.
What do you guys think about this person asked me for a meeting? Does anybody know them? This person reached out to me about this. What are your thoughts? So I found that to be really helpful. And over the years after that big group, I have participated in a few writers groups here or there and always found it to be worthwhile. A writer friend is how I got my manager.
Wow.
She forwarded a script of mine to a producer who forwarded it to someone else who called me. Like, that's how you never know how the little fingers of the network work. So I think that if you are building your network, don't forget to build it full of people who do what you do. And not just when you're trying to get something out of them or ask a favor, but building a writers group, building a group of people whose work you're willing to read and give notes on in exchange for them to do the same for you, that's where I found a lot of rich support and some stepping stones forward in my career.
You mentioned Austin and Nichols. Are there other contests that you would recommend?
Well, I think the final draft has a couple, and I believe they have genre specific ones too. So does Austin. I think that the best thing to think about when you're researching, because it's been a while since I've really looked at contests and for myself, is to, you can kind of tell from the sophistication of a website or of the credits listed on the website about who judges the scripts and the success of past winners. Just use your best judgment.
Right. Yes.
The more rinky-dink ones you can kind of tell. I definitely entered some of the smaller contests just to see if I could win, that maybe in a smaller pool, or you never know. Sometimes I would apply to contests that were in random locations in hopes I get to go there. So I found that it's partly just getting used to sending your script out, getting comfortable, sharing your material with strangers, considering it quote unquote finished, at least for now, enough to go out, was part of the challenge. The screenwriting contests, a lot of the deadlines are in the spring, like May. And I would just try to make myself always have something to submit somewhere, by May 1st, as just a way to learn how to do all this on a schedule. Because one script I spent 4 years working on. And that script didn't do anything for me, didn't go anywhere, was not more genius or less, whatever, because I spent so much time on it. I really had to learn that learning how to be swift and just move through it was as important. Getting to the end is as important as anything. So the contest can be helpful for that too.
That's right. That's good. Okay. So what is your favorite script that you've written?
Well, unproduced. I wrote a movie for Amblin a few years ago that I love dearly, and I hope still finds, a path forward at some point. It was an adaptation of a YA novel that I really had fun writing. In terms of produced scripts, probably the sequel to The Christmas House, it's called Christmas House 2, Deck Those Halls, I wrote it with the intention of seeing how far I could go with comedy, with different and unique, plot lines and set pieces. And, it's not an outrageously maniacal Christmas movie, but it felt really maybe the most like my voice of all the Christmas movies I've written. And I really, think the movie is fun.
Yeah. Now, one question I just realized is when you're doing these let's say Christmas movies, is there a page count that is ideal?
Well, it depends a little bit on who you're writing for. If you're writing for a place where there's going to be commercial breaks or there's going to be none, their structures are broadly the same, but because of those breaks for commercials, it does affect kind of the flow of the action and what needs to happen at each along the way. So the page counts can reflect that. I think that for a comedy or a rom-com, I try not to ever go over 110.
Okay, that's great. What if a script was like 85 pages, 88 pages? Would that be too short?
Yes.
Okay.
I would. If I saw that, I'd think something's missing. And sometimes scripts are that short because the action takes, longer in real life than it does on the page. But for certain genres like a more heartfelt Christmas movie or a rom-com or something that's really character arcs are really important, that seems a little short.
Okay. All right. Now, getting a movie made can be stressful. So how do you maintain a work-life balance? Do you have any hobbies?
I don't know. I honestly don't know that I do. I have a lot of jobs, so there's always more work to do. I feel like part of, like I said, learning how to maintain your mental health as a writer is part of the gig. You get better as you get older, hopefully. Life naturally gives you lots of things to care about. So sometimes there's limits to how much you can work anyway. I really enjoy, I live in Los Angeles. I really enjoy doing things in the city. I really enjoy reading, and I do a lot of, I'm a bookworm in my off hours, which my poor eyeballs, I think my vision is just decreasing at a rapid rate year after year. But I think that, my life feels like I travel a lot. I spend a lot of time with visiting people and with friends, and you need that. You need a certain amount of boisterous activity and stimulation in your life in order to give you things to write about. And travel has been something, because of this flexibility of this career, of being able to work anywhere. And I take advantage of that, and we'll spend weeks out of town somewhere and trying to let my imagination kind of go and think of different worlds and different characters and different storylines. And I read a lot too, because I find random little facts or random little references will spark an idea. I get a lot of inspiration from reading other things. Some people, I think their imagination is vivid enough that they just conceive of ideas. And occasionally that's happened to me, but I have found that if I talked in depth about anything I've written, it would all be traced back to like, well, I read this one sentence, or I heard this one reference to this one historical event, or I saw this one painting in this one place. And that's where it all starts for me.
That's great. Now, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Not to be so afraid. I think that I thought as a young writer that I needed every script had to be perfect, that every script had to withstand comparison to the best screenwriter in the world who'd been doing it for decades longer than me, that was the only way to be quote unquote a good writer. And once I realized that was not the case, that finishing a script was the victory, that, part of the writing process is rewriting, that buyers can fall in love with your work without it being perfect. They can love your voice, even if the story is kind of lame. They can love the story and think your execution kind of sucked, but be willing to work with you on making it better. They can love a character, and that can start a whole conversation about what else, you could do. I didn't realize that you didn't have to be perfect. The one way I would say try to be perfect is typos and the way your material looks on the page. If I've encountered a few typos in the first 20 pages of a script, my thoughts start to go to how amateurish this writer might be. But in general, there's a lot of value in finishing a story, even if it's not perfect, and starting to get people's thoughts on it, whether it's friends, writers group, a producer you want to work with, a contest, that's sitting on it and feeling like you need to hone it and polish and polish and polish. I don't know that actually makes the difference, because a great idea bubbles up sometimes even with bad writing, and great writing bubbles up even with not a great idea. So I wish I'd known that sooner.
Good. It's good to hear. And good to hear that, you don't have to make it a perfect screenplay.
The thing also, having worked on the other side of it, development executives and producers are fully intending to put their stamp on the material anyway. Right. That they're fully intending that when they buy a script from you, it is the first step of a many-step process in which you will change a lot of things. You may think it's perfect, and you may be right that for you it is, but I guarantee you, once it becomes the property of a studio or a network, sit back, relax, and start getting notes. Like that is the process. So you can't skip that step, no matter how much you try. The next step, once you sell a script, is rewriting it with other people's thoughts and having to change things. So once I realized that too, and embraced that process and appreciating that letting other people own your script with you is how you get it made. Trying to prevent them from having any say in it is how you stop the process. But welcoming them in and asking for notes and asking for feedback and being willing to have those conversations is how you continue to move your script down the line.
Good advice. Now, to wrap up, would you like to share any social media details or website links so our audience can keep track of your work?
Well, I have a very minimalistic website at erinrodman.com. That really is just kind of a landing page, but you can find me there. And then I'm most active on Instagram at Erin, ERIN 917. Like I said, I'm a big believer in learning a lot from other writers. I really consume a lot of podcasts myself and watch every panel I can. The Blacklist launched a something called Word by Word over the not the pandemic, the strike.
Seemed
that
like
was yeah, long interviews with lots of writers that I love, and I have found those their videos usually. Right. I found it to be really fun to listen to, and it's just always such a nice reminder that writing is hard for everybody. You get better at getting your butt in the seat and opening the document and typing. That's the part that you get maybe better at. Just even when it's hard, you still do it. But the process itself is a challenge for everybody always. And it makes me feel so much better to know that this is just the shared burden
right.
of that, goes hand in hand with this beautiful gift of a career we get to have. So, I think it's great that, listen to as much as you can. I still do. I haven't gotten tired of it yet.
I'm a podcast fanatic. I love it.
Yeah.
That's why I started this one.
I know.
Well, Erin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing your experience, and all this wisdom is really going to be helpful. So thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Good luck, everybody. Keep at it.
Yay. Thank you. And now for my takeaways. Today I have 5 from my interview with Erin. Number 1, any genre can attract buyers. Erin didn't write a Christmas movie to get into Christmas movies. She wrote in her voice entirely. She didn't try to guess what producers or buyers might want. She wrote, in fact, an R-rated comedy, and that's what got her a lot of meetings, including a meeting with Hallmark. You don't have to write a Christmas movie to get on Christmas production companies' radar. Just be true to your own unique voice. Number 2, don't be cliche. There are thousands of Christmas movies, so try and keep the visuals fresh. Erin pursues comedy. She finds the most outrageous way to show, for example, a baking cookies scene or a snowball fight that makes it seem fresh. Start Googling strange Christmas traditions people or locations have, and you'll come up with some fresh takes on an old trope. Number 3, get started on your next project. Erin admits that writers only have so much control. The most you can do is have more than one idea going. When you finish a script, share it with friends to get initial feedback. If you have a relationship with producers, let them know what you're working on. Don't sit by the phone or hit your email refresh button waiting for someone to say yes. Pivot to your next idea. The more diversified your efforts are, the more you can see your career as a bigger thing and not project-specific. Number 4, contests. Contests, love them or hate them, you just have to do your research. According to Erin, if you place in a big one like Nichols, Austin, or Final Draft, you might hear from representatives, so there is an upside. You just need to be choosy which ones you enter. Number 5, adding other genres. I asked Erin about adding another genre to Christmas scripts. She reminds us that Christmas needs to feel intrinsic to the story. It can't just be the backdrop. The concept has to feel connected to Christmas. If the action itself, what the characters are going through, isn't connected to the holiday, it's just artifice. Well, that's the show. Thank you for listening. To show your support, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts, and sign up to be notified of the launch of our membership section of our website. This is where producers will post requests for tailored Christmas submissions, and writers can submit a written pitch. Sign up at www.christmasmoviescreenwriter.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next Christmas Movie Screenwriter podcast. Bye.